Hello, Julie Bartkus here. Welcome to Get Connected with my fantastic co-host, Michael Tasner. Today we are talking about something that is absolutely imperative for you to understand and get a grip of, which is your profit killers. And if you look at your profit and loss statement on a monthly basis, or even if you look at it once in a while, the things that we're talking about today aren't necessarily something that's going to appear on that statement. So it's really important that you grab a pen, grab a notepad, and you get prepared to write down some of these profit killers that we're going to talk about, because we want to help you create a much more profitable model for your childcare business. Hey, Michael, how's it going?
Hey, I'm doing really, really well. Like, so excited about today's topic.
Yeah, me too.
I think I've mentioned a little bit in the past, but I read a book and then became a profit first consultant. So really great book. If you haven't read that book, or any of the people that are listening haven't had a chance to read it, definitely check it out. Amazing book. The premise is, really about kind of paying yourself first and making sure that you're taking profit. I think far too often, a lot of the child care center owners take their profits last, and they kind of take the scraps of kind of what's left, which is never a great thing to do. But there's, as Julie said, there's so many things as we were brainstorming for this call today that they're like the unwritten things that just crush profit that you may think about, but it's not really at the forefront of your mind, because it doesn't show up on, you just look at that P&L and you're like, okay, marketing, that looks like a lot, cut that back. Phone expense, lease, wages, all that kind of stuff. Yeah, exactly.
We start looking at all the little things that we could be cutting, when really we need to be looking at the bigger picture of what your top profit killers are. So we want to shed some light on that today. And I think it's, like Michael said, I think it's just really important that you know what's really killing your profits, because we have seen and helped transform childcare programs go from like not making that much money, not having that much profits, to really increasing the profitability. And it's all centered around what we're sharing with you today. So it's so important. And I'm so glad that you're here. And if you're here tuning in, please feel free to say hello and let us know what you think your biggest profit killers in your childcare business or your childcare program are. So if you're thinking like, this is what I really need to do to get more profitability, what would you say that is? And we're going to shed some light on this for you today.
Yeah, just posted that on our little chat here. So I'm going to keep an eye and watch for the replies to come through throughout the call.
Great.
Love it. So let's dive in. I know we've been having a great month. We had a great call last week where we were talking about
holiday ideas.
Every holiday ideas. And I really hope that you not only listened to that, but you also jumped into Julie's live that she's been doing on workplace gossip. So she's the queen of fixing workplace gossip once and for all, not just, okay, Sarah's at the water cooler and talking about the director or whatnot, but fixing the culture behind it, working with the owners, the directors, the team, because that really, obviously, as we'll talk today, is obviously a huge profit killer. But make sure that you've tuned into that episode, because there was a lot of great tips of other things you can do around the holidays. This is obviously a lot of kind of holiday planning mode. And even though centers are doing things a bit differently, they're not typically throwing those big, lavish holiday gatherings that you might have done in the past and holiday parties. They're still planning fun things to make it a memorable event for the families and parents and the children that are attending your centers.
Yeah, absolutely. And now's a really fun time to be thinking about 2021. What is it that you want to kick off the year looking like from a business perspective? And if you want to have some of these profit killers under control, what a cool time right now to be thinking about it. And the ideas are really not things that are going to be like a quick fix. Some of them are things that you've got to dig a little deeper to fix. And I think it's also going to give you the motivation to want to fix some things that have been broken in your program for a while, once you really get a handle on what's this really costing me. So I would love to hear from you in terms of what you feel your profit killers are. And then we're going to shed some light with what we've seen in childcare programs. And, I don't know, but for me, the numbers add up. One of my clients, when I went through profit killers with them, they were multi-site at the time, about 7 centers. They expanded to like 16. And at the time, it was like $14.5 million was just one of their profit killers.
Wow.
Yeah, just one.
Geez, that's huge. Wow.
That is big. And you think about these from the inception of your business. And that's the thing, is that if you look at these profit killers with everything that we're sharing with you today, it's really about going back since you started your business and how long have you been struggling with this one profit killer, and then figuring out that number from oh, wow, since I opened my business 10 years ago, or since I opened my business 5 years ago, it's really been this much. So we want to really, just put that right in the palm of your hand, or you could say, wow, I didn't even think that was costing me this much money. So do you have a place that you start?
I do. I mean, I'm going to throw the one that for me is the most obvious, but just being the marketing guy, I'll go there. For me, anytime that I look at starting a relationship with the child care center, usually we'll throw a couple of bonuses. Just as a way to kind of kickstart a relationship. So we'll dive in and we'll start helping with their marketing and things like that. But the first bonus that I almost always offer, unless it's a brand new center from scratch, is a reactivation campaign. And what I have found that is just crushing your profits, crushing your exponential growth, is the leads. I just got off the phone and I had a call this morning. 2-location center, and I asked the question around, I mean, how are you kind of following up with, and how are you adjusted here? Got my holiday mug today. Also, I've got like 4 or 5 of these different. These are the Starbucks cups that
nice.
I'm using as a water cup.
I've got a Virginia mug. Anybody from Virginia out there?
Oh, I like that. That's a cute mug. Starbucks did a great promotion, and it was crazy because I didn't even hear about it. And I've got these Starbucks app, and I'm not like a Starbucks junkie where I'm going 5 times a week like some people, but maybe a couple of times a month when I'm in the mood. And I didn't even hear about it. My kids heard about it on TikTok, and they're like, hey, did you know that if you go in and buy any drink today, you get a free Starbucks cup? So
really, oh my
kind of crazy that, I mean, they don't drink Starbucks, but those couple of advertisements and the couple of the influencers that Starbucks had paired with were able to literally help influence, 12-year-olds, 10-year-olds to tell their parents, I want a holiday mug. And that was what their advertising was around. So crazy. I mean, it really created, I went in, instead of normally spending $6, I think I walked out spending $40 because everybody in my family needed a mug. My daughter wanted to try some Frappuccino with no caffeine or whatever. And then my 3-year-old had to have one. So hers was like iced lemonade with peach flavoring or whatever. And all so that we could walk out with these mugs. But
nice.
Anyways, so the leads are normally they're just sitting there. And if you don't have a way to be tracking everything that does not rely on paper and memory, you've got to get something in place. So you're getting all these random families, these random people that are calling into your center and talking to your director potentially, or talking to you. You have other people that are filling out lead forms. Maybe they're sending you a Facebook message to your Facebook Messenger. And you've kind of got these different people scattered all throughout. And I'll ask the question, A, how many of these do you have? And in every center, it varies. If you've got multi-locations, I've seen some centers that have 500 to 800 leads over give or take a 6-month period. And I'm like, okay, well, what have you done with these? So we tried calling and they didn't respond, or we sent them an email, we didn't hear back. So you're always sitting on this potential gold mine of enrollments that you've already attracted their attention once. And there's all these different unwritten kind of marketing rules of the marketing rule of 7. There's the rule of 11, 12. There's tons of different numbers of basically how many times do they need to hear from you to be in a buying readiness state. But the lowest number that I've ever seen published is 7. So if they raise their hand once, you have a conversation, you can count it as 1, you could count it as 2. It depends. So let's say you count it as they saw your website and then they decided to call in. So they've interacted with your website and a call. So that's 2. And if they don't say, okay, I want to come in for a tour, you often kind of put them out of your mind.
Yeah.
And they might not have been ready right then, or maybe they're going to shop around for a week or two, but in their mind, they're wanting you to follow up and kind of sell them on your center.
Yeah.
And in your mind, it might be the opposite of like, hey, I mean, we used to have a wait list and they should be begging to get in, but you're sitting on these leads that you've already been generating from one way or another. They're normally in different buckets and baskets. And usually I'm hearing and seeing that they're on paper. You've got like a walk-in form that someone fills out if someone walks in. If you're still taking walk-ins, they fill it out, but then that gets filed away.
Mm-hmm.
You've got these people that have called in that you might jot down some stuff on a Post-it note, and you got the number and maybe a little bit of information. And then if they don't sign up now or come in and tour, now that gets tossed aside. So for me, and selfishly, that usually is one of your biggest profit killers. Or if you're working with an agency like mine and you're investing money and we drive you leads and you don't follow up. So same kind of thing. You've got these leads that are sitting there that you've got to nurture them and you've got to work them and kind of get them to know, like, and trust you before they're going to make that decision to enroll their kids with you. So that was the one that for me, is the most obvious to start with from my side, but it's definitely one that I see every single day, all day, every day.
Yeah, and I encourage everybody, and we used to do a profit analysis when we would sign our clients on, where we would look at all the different potential. I'd call it my profit potential analysis. What is the potential that you have to bring in your childcare program? And what Michael's talking about is like, look at how many, and you can let me know if I'm off track here, Michael, but like, look at how many people or how many clients you could potentially enroll. And because those spots are sitting there unfilled, how much money are you losing every single month? Now, if you look back and say, okay, well, we've always been at 80% capacity and you've got 20% that you haven't filled for like 10 years, that's the number that I would be calculating to figure out one part of that profit killer is what's the missed opportunity by having those spots vacant and empty. And a lot of times when I talk to childcare owners and we're looking at profit potential, it's like, oh, I don't even want to look at those numbers because it would probably be too painful. But that's a problem. If we're not looking at those numbers, we're not really motivated to put into practice another solution. So it's really important that you do look at those numbers and you say, wow, for the past 10 years, I've really stopped at 20% capacity or 50% or whatever you could do right now in COVID times. But if your enrollments are low, what are you missing out on monthly, yearly, and then lifetime because those spots are open? And I'd be looking at it like, wow, I've started my business 10 years ago and I've always been down 10 clients. Those 10 clients are worth $10,000 a month, 10,000 times 10 years, 10,000 times 12 is what, $120,000 a year. Multiply that by 10. That's what, is that 1.2 million? I I'll get lost there.
It's a lot of money. I mean, it's as you said, it's the lifetime value. And we've talked a little bit about that over the last couple of months, but you've got to start thinking of things a little bit differently, and ignoring something doesn't make it just go away of, well, geez, I know that we're not great at following up with leads. Right. But then here you are later in the afternoon or a week later complaining about your enrollment numbers. But you're not addressing the thing that's really the crux of the problem, that you might not have a lead issue. You might have a follow-up or a conversion issue. So there's always different ways to diagnose it. But as Julie said, if your tuition was $1,000 a month, for example, and that family, even if they're staying for 10 months out of the year, that's worth $10,000, one enrollment, one client, one family. Yeah. Not for even family, one child. One child. And if they're going to stay longer. So what if they're coming in as an infant and the family's going to stay with you for 5-6 years? That one enrollment, the lifetime value is, we're talking 50 to 60,000. But that's also not factoring in the number one source of leads that every child care center owner tells me. It's word of mouth. Well, they're also potentially going to refer 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that number is of other families that you don't have to invest a penny to get. So if you start to think about it that way, those enrollments that you didn't follow up with, that maybe you could have closed 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever the number is, not only did it cost you that enrollment and that money each month, but that money each month for 10 months or longer, the potential referral for, as you see, years and years and years. So you've got to start to address those things. And again, I know it's not fun to look at. It's never a fun exercise, but one of the calls that I was on earlier when we were talking through one of the strategies, and he was like, we just got to have to rip the Band-Aid off,
right,
and just kind of look through this.
A little bit.
And I'm like, all right, just be blunt and transparent, because I couldn't keep dancing around. We had a website, an internal site that wasn't performing as well as I wanted. And he's like, do you want to rip the Band-Aid off, or do you want to dance around it? And like, rip the Band-Aid off. He's like, we got to redo the whole website. So I'm fine with that. But I can't just keep ignoring it and hoping that it's just going to magically improve.
Right. Yeah, it's so important, such an important number to look at. And it would be cool if missed opportunities was a line on your profit and loss statement, but it's not, or lack of follow-up, and it's not. So that's why you really got to get plugged in to these things and to these profit killers, because they will just flatten you. And they do say fortunes in the follow-up for a reason. And have you ever looked at any of the numbers, Michael, with people and say, this is what you're really losing out on by not having these spots filled?
We have. There's a lot of different numbers to look at. So the first number that I always look at is how many leads did you get? Mm-hmm. And then how many of those leads converted into tours? Yeah. And that usually is one of the first profit killers, is the ratio of leads to tours. So I've seen good centers close as much as 70%. So for example, if you get 10 leads, whether they come in through email, phone calls, whatever they are, that you can convert 7 of those into a tour. But I've seen the opposite, where a center that isn't performing as well, they have closed 1 or 2. So they're closing at maybe 10 or 20%.
Yeah.
And then I look at 2 things. I look at, is it a lead? I'm gonna put some WD-40 on this chair. It's always like squeaky. It's like every time I move it squeaks. I look at, is there a problem with the leads, which is the first area that I tend to look, or is there a problem with the way you're talking on the phone and the way you're answering questions, or is it really crappy follow-up? Yeah. And usually it's a little bit of everything, but you'd be surprised to hear that almost always it's not the leads.
Yeah.
So it's easy to blame the leads, but why would they have called in the first place?
Right.
Why would they have filled out a form and given all their details and phone number and address? And like, people don't do that unless you're advertising free Amazon gift cards or something like that. They're not going to take the time to do that. So if you keep that in the back of your mind, because it's easy to blame the leads and say, well, we got 10 leads, but I don't think they were really good leads.
Yeah.
You've got to look in the mirror and start to dissect the rest of that process. And what you'll find is that along each of the stages, there are those profit leaks of the follow-up, for example, how quick you're getting back to people. And then as Julie said, as you start to then do the math of, well, if you had 10 leads, but you only were able to convert 2 of them to tours, so 20%, when you should have been converting 5, 6, 7 or more of them. Well, now you've only got 2 tours to work with. So how many enrollments are you going to end up getting? In a perfect world, you're going to go 2 for 2 and you're going to close both. Mm-hmm. But if you only close 1 of the 2, then those 10 leads only turned into 1 enrollment, when it could have been substantially higher. And that, again, is where you really start to look at those numbers. Well, geez, our follow-up is costing us 5 tours a week or 5 tours a month. And then those tours would have correlated back to 3 enrollments. And then you continue to do that math. So it's not a fun process to go through, but you need to get your benchmarks. Mm-hmm. What do your benchmark numbers look like? I mean, how many tours are you currently doing? How many, whether they're virtual or in person? How many leads are you currently getting? So once you kind of have that starting point, you can then start to really identify where the leaks are, so to speak.
Yeah, that's really important. And I also think a profit killer in itself is not knowing what the issue is. It's guessing what your issues are. So if you speak with somebody like myself, or you speak with Michael, and you're like, all right, this is what's going on, we can really help you pinpoint exactly where you're stuck so that you can turn it around into a more profitable situation. But if you're not keeping track of your leads, not keeping track of your conversions of leads into tours, and so on and so forth, that's a profit killer right there in itself. It's just really not knowing where the issue lies. And it's really important to get a hold of.
Definitely.
Yeah.
So what have you seen on the staff level? Obviously, there's a lot of different profit killers there, but what would you throw as one or two areas that you're seeing on the staff side?
Well, so staff, one of the most obvious ones, and I think this applies to parents as well, but it's turnover. And granted, there's good turnover, and granted, there's turnover that serves our vision, serves our program. There's also a lot of unwanted turnover. And, experts will say that turnover can cost you somewhere around 30% of what you would pay somebody on an annual basis. So if you're bringing somebody in, they're going to make hypothetically $10,000 a year. If they turn over, it's like, oh, $3,000 just went out the window. And like I said, there's not a line item on your profit and loss statement to really help you identify this. So it's really important that you start looking at, well, what is my turnover rate? How long do people come in, and how long do they stay? And how quickly are we turning them over? Because if you're getting somebody in and then they're gone and out in a week or 2 weeks, the shorter period, it's not like the more they cost you, because you're investing time in their training, in their onboarding, and all of that you go through to get them there, and then they leave. Which doesn't mean we should manage by fear. We shouldn't. That could be a whole profit killer in itself. But to really understand that when your staff comes in and you're turning over, it's really creating this big hole in your profitability that's hard to recover. And that's one aspect. So one side of it is turnover. Another side of it is unmotivated staff. And unmotivated staff, there's a whole series of calculations that you can go through to figure out what's dripping out of your pocket. And we could talk about that a little bit, but look at your turnover numbers, know those. How long are you retaining people? How many people are you turning over each year? And then put an estimate on how much that is costing you. If you look at it just from a simple basis of 30% of what I would pay them on an annual basis is what is dripping out of my pocket when turnover happens.
That's crazy to think of those numbers, because I've had more turnover this year than we've had in ages. And I think I could easily blame COVID and say, well, it's a lot of weirdness from that, and created some weird family situations and dynamics. And that was part of it. But they're big numbers. And obviously, staffing and bringing in the right team members is very, very important in this industry. Which is where I know you spend a lot of your time, of hiring and recruiting and motivating great staff and great team. But just think about also the ripple effect of the turnover. So now all of a sudden, maybe another teacher was on the fence, and then, well, geez, that person left.
Yeah.
So now we're going to follow suit.
Yep. So that person leaves, there's a ripple effect, but also with parents too, because we've had in some childcare programs where a teacher leaves, and guess whose contact information they have? They have all the parents' contact information. So they start contacting the parents saying, hey, I'm no longer working there, but I'm going to be opening up my own in my home, whatever it might be.
Sure.
But yeah, so a lot of times, those relationships really hurt your program. If you don't have, and so this is a profit killer in itself, if you don't have current, really good, positive relationships built with your parents, that can easily turn into a big money suck. Because then when turmoil happens or people leave, where's that parent's loyalty? Is it going to be to you, or is it going to be to your teacher? So I'm really working with my clients to build that parent loyalty and staff loyalty, so that when something happens, it's like, oh, but I believe in Deidre, I believe in Susan, I believe in Mary. So I believe in them, and they're going to have their loyalty to you more so than your staff. And there's specific ways that you can do that, but be careful that that is a huge profit killer in itself.
Hey, I've thought about that, and I've seen it many, many times. But I really love your comment and your thought of making sure that you have the parent information, and that you have it in a place that, how can I phrase this? That I guess somebody couldn't maliciously delete everything easily, for example. So I've seen many times. Yeah, like I've seen it many times where the director thought that you promised X, or they were expecting a big raise or a bonus, or they just, whatever happened. Doesn't really, I mean, there's lots of reasons, obviously, why people leave, voluntary or involuntary. But then all of a sudden they go through your database in whatever software you're using or Procare or whatever it is, and they copy all the information down. And then maybe they start hitting the delete key. And obviously they can get into some big legal troubles and things like that. But this stuff happens often. And people in this kind of climate, it's a lot of like survival of the fittest. And I'm seeing some really weird things happening in a lot of the centers that we've been working with, similar to you said, of centers that then contact the 20 enrollments and, hey, I've got capacity to do 10 at my house, and I'll save you $100 a month, and you still get to work with me, for example. And all of a sudden then 10 of your enrollments are out the window in 2 weeks before you even realize what was going on. So definitely a huge thing. Huge thing.
And, you know, and another profit killer that I want to bring up, and I'm sure that you could talk to this one as well, is the managing of all the craziness. And there's so many different ways that this plays out, but imagine your time that you take to, you know, deal with a staff member who's leaving, to deal with an issue of maybe they've got all the contacts, and that's your time. And I would look at your time and think about how much you make and how much of your time are you spending on drama, on craziness, on unmotivated staff, and do a little calculation there. Because if you're spending 10 hours a week, and maybe you should be making $100 an hour, you know, that's coming out to $1,000 a week that is going down the pipes, being drained out of your pocket because we're just managing the craziness. But it doesn't stop there. This is, to me, where the numbers get really scary. We should have done this on Halloween, now that I think of it. Maybe next year. The Halloween profit killer show. I like it. But it gets really scary, because if you start thinking about your time, but then think about your leader's time. Think about everybody who's in leadership. How much time are they spending managing the craziness? And if it's turnover, it, you know, comes down to, well, how much time are we spending training and retraining and hiring and rehiring? But then look down the pipeline at your staff, and how much of their time are they unmotivated and not really being productive? And you could take all those numbers and add them together and be really blown away by what it's costing you. So one aspect is just managing the craziness, while a whole other aspect is looking at, wow, what's unmotivated staff costing me? And in one childcare program, when we were doing a live event, I think it was last year out in Vegas, we had a group of directors who asked me a question about dealing with a certain staff member. And I said, well, how long have you been dealing with this? And they're like, oh, 2 years. And we did a little number calculation. I said, okay, I want everybody to think about this. Write down that one troubled staff member and the craziness that you've been managing, just around that one, and figure out how much time per week, and then multiply that by a month, by a year, and by the number of years you've been dealing with the issue. How much of your time has went to that one situation? What does it cost you? And for this one group of directors, I think they figured it was like somewhere around $50,000 that this one destructive situation with this one person was costing them. And this is a huge profit killer, because sometimes it's really better just to release the person so they could grow underneath somebody's leadership. And at other times, it's really important to recognize where your leadership needs to build skills so that we don't have to manage these crazy situations over and over and over and over and over again, because those are things that do drain your profits.
Well, and I think the thing to kind of remind everyone on, and we said it, we said it earlier, but often the things that are, again, crushing your numbers and your profits are the things that you're not necessarily always thinking about.
Right.
And I've done this a few times here and there, where you're kind of analyzing the numbers, and you're looking at it on the month basis, or maybe you're trying to forecast out a couple of months, but you're looking at just what's on paper. Yeah. And again, the stuff that Julie and I have been talking about is your lead numbers aren't typically making it to your P&L. And I mean, your staff, while they're on there as employees, all of the drama and like all that other quote unquote stuff that doesn't make it where it's not as black and white. And that really is why you've got to have that creative thinking time. And I know it's easier said than done. And I've been trying to do a lot more with having that time. And Julie, correct me if I'm wrong, I think you have some time every morning where you kind of do creative thinking and you're doing your gratitude journal and things like that, that a lot of the centers that I work with and Julie works with, I know often you kind of jump into the firefighting mode or just jump into the day, and you're kind of be looking at these things after the fact. And it's not that it's too late. It's never too late to course correct and start improving things. But if you were to have some of that time, even if it's just 15 minutes a day, and you, whether it's meditation or whatever you do to kind of just think about the business so that you can work on the business versus in the business, and just kind of slapping things on paper. I like to do that at least 2 or 3 times a week. And that's the stuff that I usually don't see on paper.
Right.
And you'll start to think about it and kind of start to take those corrective actions, so to speak.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. I think it's the creative thinking that allows you to be proactive with the plan that you're going to put in place. And here's a really interesting statistic for you, is that for every minute you spend or you invest in planning, you say 4 to 10 times that amount in execution. So just 1 minute of planning, 1 minute of mapping out your day, of mapping out your strategy is going to save you possibly 4 times to 10 times that amount when you actually go to implement. So what I encourage teams to think about is, what could you plan out? During a staff meeting, can you plan out a different crisis situation that may come up, whatever it might be, so that you're not dripping profits during those crisis situations? And sometimes things like that are unavoidable, but even a staff member quits. And we know that we've been in this repeating pattern of people quitting, and then staff members don't know what to say, and they do more harm than they do good because they talk to parents and gossip with parents. But what if we took some planning time and we wrote out scripts, or we wrote out like different things that staff members would say when somebody does leave, that they would be able to talk to the parents about, or you plan it out and you've got a letter written out or whatever it might be, so that you're proactive with that. That doesn't mean that that's the direction we want to go in, but the more you plan for the things that are your crises, the more time you're going to get back, which is going to be more profitability in your pocket.
Definitely. Another one that I wanted to throw out there, that it's a little bit tougher to plan, but I've been hearing it a lot more than I normally do or normally would. And that is a lot of centers that have decided to expand. And they've done it one of a couple of ways. They've either decided to expand at their existing locations, maybe take over some more space in the lease. They've decided to open up a second or a third location, for example, or whatever that number might be. And they're getting these leases either way too far in advance, or they're doing the opposite, and they're expecting that they can grab a lease and they're going to get all their licensing and then it's magically going to happen and they can open up in 3 weeks. And I'm seeing a lot of that, where then that amount of money, that expense, that outflow is crushing their other business. And obviously there's always going to be a little bit of a nature of having your other location kind of helping fund things. But hearing a lot of centers, they're like, well, I thought at some point I might want to expand, so I took out a lease at $5,000 a month on another location. I say, well, have you done anything with that yet? No, we haven't really done anything because enrollments have suffered here, and they're still paying the lease, and you kind of get into these tough spots. So I'm in no way a real estate expert or a lease expert or anything like that, but I would encourage you to really just take a look at the planning side of things, to really try and plan that through, because I'm getting more calls than I ever have been of people that are opening up new locations. And I'm saying, well, when are you opening up a new location? Or like, what's the start date, for example? And I'm shocked by some of these centers that are like, oh, we're opening up in 3 weeks, for example. Like, so they're paying for the lease the last couple of months and like doing all these fancy things, and well, what have you been doing to market it? Well, I haven't really done much of anything. We're hoping we get some billboards or posters or something like that up. So
right. Yeah. So
craziness.
so that's really, so how would you title that profit killer?
I'm just going to adjust my camera for just 1 second. It was
Sure.
just going to turn the fan, but I think the way, to me, it's probably more along the lines of the strategy piece of not having the strategy fully planned out. This camera fix, sorry.
So lack of planning, which
a lack of planning where either, and I think now that I'm thinking about this one, it might even be being too overly confident. And sometimes I'm a little bit too much of a realist, but I want you to be having your vision plans, and I want everyone to be growing, but I also want you've got to manage the cash. And that's where a lot of centers are getting into tough spots than they have in the last 6 months, or even the centers that they're still looking at it and they're barely scraping by. And I'm talking to a lot of those centers almost every day. Wow. And a lot of it was around being a little bit too overly optimistic with a new location, that if you build it and they will come. And you're having to do a lot more marketing. Often I'm suggesting minimum 4 months, but more so 6 to 8 months in advance, to where you want to be marketing a new location, doing your pre-enrollment, getting deposits, like all of that stuff in advance. And again, I'm not saying that you're going to open up with, 100% capacity, but I feel terrible when I start seeing these profit killers of, well, I've been paying on a building, I've been paying on this lease, and been paying on X. So, those are all on the P&L that you can take a look at. And you got to sometimes make those tough decisions of, is it something you should put on hold for right now, and kind of stabilize an existing location and focus on growing in enrollments there, because you then end up kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul. And that's what I did, quite frankly, at my first agency that I started when I was younger. A lot of people, I don't want to turn this into an accounting conversation, but they practice what people call kind of bank account, what's the phrase, like bank account bookkeeping, where you would log into your bank account. Okay, great, I've got 50 grand. So that's enough to pay payroll this month and pay the lease and pay myself a little bit of money, and everything is good. Right. But then you don't realize, well, then you log in a week later, oh, geez, I forgot that the taxes for 13 grand were coming out, and I forgot I had my insurance renewal. That's an auto and all of a sudden you really didn't kind of forecast correctly. And it really starts to become a bit of a little bit of a nightmare, where you're overly confident because you see this big balance. And I would do that at my agency. Oh, great, there's 100 grand in the bank account. I'm like, I'm rich. And then I'm like, well, geez, I forgot that, well, like salaries are 40 grand. Yeah. Oh, geez, well, this month it's 3 paychecks. I forgot about that. So you've got to really make sure that you're forecasting this stuff out. I can never overestimate or over-recommend the power of a good bookkeeper, so that you can see your numbers. I look at my numbers 3 or 4 times a week, candidly. I'm looking at every expense, and I'm always finding, I guess that's another random profit killer for people to look at, is maybe every couple of months to be auditing your credit card charges. I found I'm a huge fan of credit card miles and points. So I've got a little bit of an obsession with different credit cards, where I'll open up one because they've got amazing rewards. Right. Maximize it. So I just found out last week, I don't have anywhere to go yet, but I guess I'm Southwest, the Southwest Companion Pass, which is their highest level, where you can fly and then you can bring one person to fly with you for free all year, unlimited. So I'm like, I better figure out some places to go. But I started auditing through, and I'm like, well, geez, there's a bunch of things that are killing our profit, that just the little $19 subscriptions that you haven't used in 3 years. And I found one of our credit cards had a ton of fraud that I was paying for that I didn't even realize, like not big numbers, but stuff that adds up. And when you get so you get so caught up in the day to day that it took me 3 months to even realize it, because the numbers were $300, like not big numbers in my opinion. But that stuff starts to add up, and that's money that you could be putting back into profits for your business, money you could be using to reinvest to pay for some fun holiday stuff for your team and things like that.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point. I was thinking about that too when we talked about doing this topic was, all the little things that you're paying for, that you sign up for, that you don't even realize. And we've had owners where it's like 3 years later, and then they finally start looking at their credit cards. But I do have a virtual accountant who's looking at my stuff. So if something's abnormal or pops up, she's like, okay, what was this? And what was this charge for? So even if I get a little, looking at my numbers once a month instead of more often than that, there's something that is caught. But look at all the different things that you're investing in and think about, where can my money be better spent? So when I think about profit killers, especially since I love performance and productivity, and those are two passion areas of mine, I think about, well, where are you spending your time repetitively that you don't need to? So I think about your time, what your time is worth. I think about hiring and rehiring and training and retraining. I think about orientation and the topics that you cover. Maybe you do them verbally when you could be doing recordings of them and getting them up. So you could be getting all of that kind of the processes in place so that you don't have to repeat some of the stuff over and over and over again. So anything where you're duplicating your time, to me, is a big profit killer. And I know another one that's really hot on my mind is thinking about mindset. And thinking, and again, this goes back to your own time and where you're investing your time. But if your mindset is not in the right place and you've got a lot of negative thoughts floating around inside of your head, you got to think about, well, how much is that costing me? And it's crazy to think that your thinking would be costing you something, but it is absolutely a huge profit killer, because you have a negative thought. That negative thought leads to a certain action, and that certain action is most likely not going to be the one that's in support of the vision that you want to bring to life. So it's really important that you start getting awareness around, all right, what kind of thoughts am I thinking? And are those thoughts supporting the vision and the business and the program that I want to bring to life?
No, that's a great point. It's a really great point that I guess if I were to add to it a little bit, and it's not necessarily the mindset piece, but just looking at how you're investing your time and making sure that you do have your mindset in check. We've talked about mindset on almost every single call.
Yes.
It's a great refresher. Yeah, it is. And it's a great refresher to me every time, because it's one of those areas that years and years ago, I ignored it. It's the same thing with culture. I kept reading about different success stories. And I don't know if you read or saw, but one of the business greats, in my opinion, Tony Shea of Zappos, passed away recently, tragically in a house fire.
Yeah.
Crazy circumstances. So I'm trying to not let all the craziness of his last 6 months, from what I've read, overshadow all the great things that he's done. Right. But he wrote a book on delivering happiness, and his premise to how he was able to grow Zappos, or Zappos, however you want to pronounce it, to a widely successful company, was 100% focused around culture. Yeah. And the reason that he felt that he was also able to get such a high valuation for his business when Amazon bought it for like $1.2 billion, so they paid like the highest multiplier than they've ever paid, is because of the culture that he was able to build. So I want you to really look at just all of the things, again, that don't seem as obvious, that you don't think about. A lot of people wouldn't think about, Julie mentioning, well, you're having your mindset in order and getting yourself in the right frame of what is it costing you to not have your head in the game. And if you all of a sudden are distracted, or if your mindset is poor and your negative energy, and then that ripple effect, and then maybe that causes a staff member to all of a sudden leave, and now you lost out on that, and another staff member leaves, and then they take 5 families because they see all these people leaving, and then you get into a bad mood and you cut your market. It goes in that effect. But as Julie said, you are the number one determination of how things are going to be. You and yourself alone. I mean, and I always second guessed that and said, well, it's more on my team and my clients and things like that. But you're setting the pace for the business. You're setting the tone for the business. You're driving the strategy, the vision, the mission. You're interacting with the families. It's going to be, you are going to be the person that makes or breaks it. And obviously got to have all that stuff in check.
And I really believe that you are your team. You are your team because you hired them or you coach them. They are an extension of you. And it's really important to look at that. The other thing when we think about profit killers is I want you to think about your calendar and think about the things that are really going to give you your big result. And they call this the Pareto Principle, where you have 20% activity that's going to get you 80% of your results. Are you calendaring those items in? Because that goes back to the planning piece that we were talking about. If you're not calendaring those things in, they're not going to get done consistently. So what you track and measure and what you put in the calendar, and a lot of people will say, you know what, we could look at your success and look at your calendar and see what the correlation is. So if your calendar, you're drawing a blank there, or it's messy, or it just doesn't have your high payoff activities in it, then that's a huge profit killer. So really open up your calendar after the show, look at it and say, what are the 3 to 5 things that I could really be doing consistently that would bring me greater levels of success? And make sure those items are in your calendar. And then repeat those things. If you've got a digital calendar, you could just copy those for the next year out. But there are just 3 to 5 things that are going to get you the majority of your success. Identify what they are and get them in your calendar and do those consistently.
Love it. And the only thing I'll add on to that one, and then I want to have you talk a little bit about your Facebook Live on Gossip and give you another plug for that. And I'll tell you if they want to have a conversation with us. We're kind of closing out our year, and so we'll give ourselves a few quick plugs on how we can continue to kind of contribute to everyone at a higher level. But check out the book. Invaluable is one of the books by Dave Crenshaw. And it's all about looking at kind of making yourself and your team invaluable and maximizing your time. And the big thing that he pushes on, and I believe it was borrowed or kind of tweaked from the gentleman that wrote Getting Things Done. Who is that? Dave Allen, maybe?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I'll have to pull that up. It'll drive me crazy. But the book Getting Things Done. And it's about minimizing the gathering points that you have to where you're having to find data. So do you have 6 different email addresses, which a lot of childcare centers, they have like info at, the owner has an email they're checking. They've got a personal Gmail account, for example. You've got multiple voicemails that are going to different places. You have files at home, files in your car, files at your office. So you have all of these different places.
Yes.
And you want to make sure that you start to minimize those gathering points so that you can start to automate some of these things. All of your emails can go to one inbox. Your voicemails can all go to your cell phone. You can eliminate some of the files from your car. So that process saves you considerable time, usually 5 to 8 hours a week.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, because I look at my emails and I swear every year I start like this process where I'm going to streamline this and I'm going to get these emails. And then it's like, a couple months later, there's 50,000 emails there again. I'm like, all right, how does this keep happening? And some people say, take that email that everything comes to and just like walk away from it. Tell everybody what your new email is that needs to know that email. And then just like say goodbye to the old one because it is out there and you're going to keep getting stuff to that one forever. So I do agree because all of this stuff leads you down this big rabbit hole. And either a rabbit hole of thinking, and one of the biggest negative thoughts too that a lot of our owners and directors are thinking is that of self-worth. And we tend to go to this place of negativity when we think like, oh, I'm not doing things right, or I don't have things organized. So the more you get back in control, and this could be, if this is something that applies to you, put in your calendar as one of your activities to do consistently, where you're just taking 30 minutes a day. Or over the holidays, take 2 solid days, but take 30 minutes a day just to organize your space, to delete emails, to streamline content, whatever it might be. And you'll be amazed at how much progress that 30 minutes a day leads to at the end of the month. That's all I'll say about that. Oh, you're still on mute, Michael.
And too many rookie mistakes. That's why I asked someone on my team to go out and get me an espresso.
Oh.
I'm like, I've had a lot of back-to-back calls, and it's not that they're draining. I love doing them, but it's more
Yes.
you
know, chocolate, caffeine.
Yeah, a little bit of caffeine boost. I bought an espresso machine that's right around the corner, but I forgot to buy all the pods for it.
Okay.
And then but somehow I forgot to buy the pods, but I bought 2 milk frothers. So apparently I can froth the milk twice, I guess. So
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about one of the profit killers, obviously, is workplace gossip, which we talked about.
Yeah.
And,
Absolutely.
tell us, I know you've been doing kind of a weekly Facebook Live. I think you've got either a course or some stuff around it, but how can people at least kind of get into that so they can start to advance that and fix that?
If you go to childcarebusinesssuccess.com, we actually put up a link there where you could sign up or register for a free Q&A call that we're doing. And I'm doing them on Fridays at 1:00. I'm not sure how long I'll keep them going, but last week's call was absolutely amazing. And this week we're going to be talking about transforming poor performers into valued team members. So we're going to continue the conversation about gossip, and then we're going to get into that. And we also have a VIP coaching program that's relatively new, that's all around staff and having the team of your dreams, whether it's attracting, interviewing, hiring, orientating, retaining, and motivating. So we look at all of those different pieces, and we do a monthly Get It Done session, which is really cool. And we'd love to have you join us. So just come, be part of the free call on Friday, get your questions answered. I wrote a book, a whole program here on Break the Gossip Chain, and we're revamping this into
my God, that thing's huge. that whole book is about gossip?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I wrote this so many years ago. So now I'm going to be doing Break the Gossip Chain 2.0.
Wow, that's huge.
A little bit more powerful, but it's all worksheets and a whole leader's guide in here and some quotes too. Maybe I'll pull one of the quotes that we could end with if I could find one. But I really encourage everybody to come and join our Q&A call. You can bring your questions and just go to Child Care Business Success, scroll down, you'll see the registration link there. Nothing fancy. It just takes you right over to Zoom where you could put in your email and get reminders of the call so you don't miss out. And that's one of the great things that you can get involved with now. And we also do at all times Getting Unstuck consultations. So if you need one of those, you could also visit the same website and sign up for a Getting Unstuck consultation.
It's definitely a great thing to look at doing, especially before I'm referring to the Get Unstuck call. The gossip stuff you definitely need. Julie and I have talked about it. I didn't realize how prevalent. I mean, I knew that there was a lot of gossip in the childcare business in terms of the workplace, but I've heard of a lot of wonderful people taking and going through Julie's kind of Get Unstuck calls, where she just has this knack of uncovering blocks, finding some of these profit leaks, for example, or profit killers, and just being able to kind of help you move in the right direction. And then she's got a great coaching program. And as I said earlier, I mean, Julie and I are just here to help support and do whatever we can to help. So this is what we do all day, every day, working in the childcare space. And we both absolutely love what we do and getting to work in this industry, in this niche often.
Absolutely. And I know Michael is doing something too right now where you are actually guaranteeing enrollments, right?
Yeah, we definitely are. So I'll throw out my URL here for a second. So it's Local Childcare Marketing. Again, we're a digital agency that focuses on driving enrollments. We're the only agency in the world that guarantees revenue. So we'll guarantee enough revenue to offset whatever you're investing in marketing. And we've probably got 4 or 5 slots left for our holiday offer, which was a completely gratis website. So normally we charge $3,000 to $5,000 for a website. We're actually giving that away to the next, I think 5 or 6 slots left. Wow. And then we'll probably close down for this year, just because January is going to be, for both Julie and I, kind of all guns blazing with just helping our members and clients. January typically is a really busy month. So that's what we have over here. But as always, if I can be of any help, if Julie can be of any help, please feel free to reach out to us. We're here to help support you in a bigger way as well.
Absolutely. And that's a profit killer. And maybe we could close with this before our quote is, is not getting help, not working with a coach. Another way that you could determine somebody's success, not only by looking at their calendar, but is also looking at their checkbook. What are you investing in? And are you investing in the growth of your own mindset, the growth of your team, the growth of your business? That's really important. And to me, when I first started investing in myself and coaching, it was really scary, like writing that check. But the rewards were so great of doing that. So if you are going through and sitting in your problems by yourself, that is a huge profit killer, because you're trying to reinvent the wheel. You're trying to think of ideas from scratch, and you're doing it with not the right support. And that totally depletes your profits. So make sure you're getting some support. And if you're like, where do I go for support? What's the right support? Talk to Michael. Give me a call. Let's have some conversations. And don't sit in your pain, because owners and directors, you're often way too pain tolerant, right? I can do this all by myself. I should be able to figure this out. And you need help, you need support. And just remember that even Oprah Winfrey has several coaches and advisors that she works with. And everybody who's incredibly successful, whether you're a top athlete on a sports team or you're the president of the United States, you have coaches, you have support, you have strategists, and we're here to help you and support you.
Oh, that's a great point.
Yeah.
And I know you've got a quote. I'm going to give a quote. I just want to maybe add 30 more seconds to that. Okay. But I really don't have a ton to add to it, because you phrased it and described it extremely well. Things don't just magically improve. They magically improve when you have kind of the right coach, the right consultant, the right team of people kind of helping you. It doesn't just, enrollments don't just kind of fall out of the sky unless you're taking certain actions. And that's, having the vision, improving your mindset, law of attraction, implementing new marketing tactics, fixing your website, all those different things. And I hear way too often, as Julie said, of center owners and directors just hoping that something is going to change. And hope, unfortunately, is not a strategy. And the quote that I've said a few times on here, but the one that I'll share, and then I'll let Julie give the closing quote, is that there are 7 days in a week. Someday is not one of them. So I hear, literally every day, someday I'll do this. And I, like Julie, practice what I preach. I went through either last night or the night before, and I totaled up how much I've invested in coaches, consultants, training programs just this year. And it was very close to, if not over, 6 figures this year. And that's not including any of the marketing that I'm doing and anything like that. I'm just talking paying, hired one particular coach to train myself and my team on advanced copywriting. That was like $15,000. And this particular program on how to maximize some financial stuff, that was $7,200. And I'm not saying it to boast, but rather that I like to eat my own dog food. And both Julie and I practice what we preach. We invest in coaches and consultants and mentors. And that is how Julie and I have been able to grow. It's, you can't do it alone. You need to have other people that have been there and done that and kind of walked in your shoes and so on. So that's my little soapbox. But that phrase when someone says someday, that's what I always think of. It just, now is the time. Be an action taker and start moving the needle.
Yeah, and I'll piggyback on that from a quote that I put up this morning, and I'm not sure if it's mine or somebody else's, but I wrote on our Childcare Business Success page, our group that we have here on Facebook, is that what if and maybe when are not success strategies. They will not lead to success. And it's funny because then somebody in the comment wrote what you just said, that someday is not a success strategy either. Someday is not a real day of the week. So it's funny that you said that. So I'm going to leave you with that. I want you to think about that what if and maybe when will not lead you to the success that you desire, and most importantly, the success that you deserve.
Great quotes. So as always, thank you for tuning in. Share this, like it, comment it, reach out to Julie, reach out to myself. Let us know if we can be of any more support. We're here to help. We'd love to kind of get you on our calendars for this year. And make sure you tune back in next week. We'll be back here with some more content, some more fire. Really enjoyed today's episode, and
me too.
Hope you did as well. So have a great rest of your Wednesday, great rest of your week, and we'll catch you next week.